So good evening, everyone. This is the June 14 meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. I am filling in for Chair Young Flesh tonight. And our first agenda item is roll call. Pastor Spriggs is at a graduation. So Mr. Parker, could you take roll call for us, please?
Sure. Chair Young Flesh, Vice Chair Delaney.
Here.
Pastor Spriggs, Ms. Domingos, Ms. Kinayu,
Here.
Ms. Kink,
Here.
Ms. Pintar,
Here.
Mr. Ware, Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Vice Chair Delaney, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. Second agenda item is public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the board on any subject matter that is within the board's jurisdiction, but not an item on today's open session. And each speaker, I believe, has 3 minutes. And Mr. Parker, could you help us with this, please?
Absolutely, Vice Chair Delaney. First, we will call Karen Remus. Ms. Remus.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. My name is Karen Remus. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I was born, raised, and currently reside in San Diego County. I was incredibly disappointed and saddened to learn that today marks Ms. Domingos' last meeting as a CLERB member. Ms. Domingos challenged the status quo, was willing to articulate hard truths, and has been a clear voice for systemic change. I wish the CLERB could have had the benefit of her insight, ideas, and voice for many years to come. That she will no longer be a member of CLERB is a tremendous loss to San Diego. She has my deep thanks for her service to our county. Thank you, CLERB members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Dr. Fishman. Dr. Fishman.
Good evening. Thank you. This Coalition of San Diego, North County Equity and Justice Coalition. I'm sorry to change gears with the presentation. I along with many other folks, were shocked to hear that Buki Domingos, her term is over, that she was not granted an extension, another term. And it really also calls to question what we've literally been doing with you guys the last few years. You just literally undermine all of our work that we've done, all the goodwill, all the support, all the work. We, in good faith, wanted to do not just inside, outside, and talk to you guys, but encourage people to be on there. For Buki to be treated this horribly and dismissed in this way is just really over the top disgusting. It makes it impossible for us to work in our community and with a sincere face, tell them to join the CLERB. Go join the CLERB, do real work, and get kicked off for doing it, for representing your community. And you don't even understand how Buki's perceived in the community. There are a lot of people that don't even begin to trust CLERB and the work that you've done, that believe, based on the reports from the state auditor, that you're accessories to murders and that you really don't care about these cases. Dismissing Buki just makes it now impossible for us to talk to the community in any sincere way about the CLERB. Why would they take you guys seriously? You're one Black woman on there that's a nurse that can actually help you guys and give you valid information and useful information about your cases. You've just thrown her off. The person that's chairing your ad hoc committee on racial disparities that's shown a sincere interest for it, again, you've tossed her off. What do you think that says to the community members? What do you think that says to all the Black people that struggle with the criminal justice system on a daily basis? I'm really shocked and horrified that you guys have done this to her and you've done this kind of damage to our community.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to Clovis H.
Good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
I'm sorry, I had not changed that on Zoom. Clovis Honore. I'm also on the leadership team for the Racial Justice Coalition. You may know I'm a former president of the San Diego branch of the NAACP, plus a few other hats in social justice and racial justice in San Diego for about 42 years. I'm completely nonplussed and confused on what's happening with Buki Domingos. We have seen a couple of incidents in recent times, in the last few weeks, where the Black community was striving to achieve certain things or placing people in certain positions, and they've been not well treated in those positions. The work that we've watched Buki do since she got on the board, we thought was really advancing the cause of racial justice in San Diego, especially with the CLERB. And you guys know the issues with CLERB way better than I do. So I'm hoping very soon and very clearly that someone will make a definitive statement to the Black community as to why this Black woman has been removed from this organization. And it's one thing to say, oh, your term is up. But there needs to be explanation why the term was not continued, considering who she is, the work she's been doing, and the work she's been doing with CLERB. So I'm hoping to see that very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Honore.
Thank you.
Next, we will go to Brody McBride. Mr. McBride.
Hi, my name's Brody McBride. I'm a local civil rights attorney. I've, for a long time, questioned the usefulness of CLERB. I represent Christina Frost. She's a transgendered woman who was violently attacked in San Diego's jails after deputies misgendered her and put her in a cell with 3 cis men. And this, I think, is the last straw for me. I don't see the usefulness of CLERB. In fact, it's not even that I don't think San Diego taxpayers are getting a benefit for their money. I think it's actually doing a disservice because it's giving the sheriff's department an air of civilian oversight that isn't really there. In this case, it looked like CLERB was bending over backwards to justify the deputy's actions. Allegation number 5 was justified. Even detentions policy R13 said, at the time of the incident, it's the policy of San Diego Sheriff's Department to receive, evaluate, house, and provide secure, safe, and humane custody of all persons, including transgender, intersex, and non-binary. In this case, it was neither safe nor humane to put Ms. Frost in that cell. And if anyone's pretending otherwise, we've got a bigger problem on our hands. Even more disheartening was allegation number 10, the gender discrimination allegation. This was not sustained because jail surveillance video does not include audio. Without audio of conversations, the complaint and deputies, the evidence was insufficient to prove or disprove the allegation. Well, Ms. Frost gave statements subject to penalty of perjury. I don't know if the deputies did, but they definitely misgendered her repeatedly in her reports. So CLERB just ignored that. This is the last complaint I'm filing with CLERB. I think this organization needs to be disbanded. Our tax dollars are better spent elsewhere. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Martin Eder.
Yes, Martin Eder of Activist San Diego. Spent 20 years of my life in education at the college and university level, teaching race and class, and teaching at the graduate level about multicultural education. I have known Buki Domingos for many years, and I believe deeply that her voice in CLERB is essential kind of voice that's needed by the community within this organization. And it is deeply disheartening to hear that her tenure is not being continued, and I think reflects very badly both in the community and those making this kind of decision, that a voice like this is unable to continue to do the work and to lift up the kind of opinion that I think is so vital and necessary to raise the tough issues that this community as a whole, and I'm talking about the police department itself, needs somebody to raise the tough issues in order to be able to, I was going to say reform itself. No, it needs a lot of outside pressure in order to do that. And Buki and the Racial Justice Coalition are eminently qualified to help that, that process, both inside and outside. So I would encourage all of those who have a pull and an interest to make sure that this decision, in whatever way possible, gets turned around. And I thank you for the time and the consideration.
Thank you. Next, we will go to the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego.
This is Buki. I have not received an invite to my last meeting, and I'm asking that I receive an invite to this Zoom meeting and a closed session. Thank you.
Thank you. And in reference to Ms. Domingos' question or comment right there, she has been sent both links to open and closed session. That is my understanding, just as every other board member has. Closed session links were sent last week. The open session links were sent either yesterday or today, I believe it was yesterday, to all board members. All board members were asked to make sure that prior to the meeting that they had their links. And we have had no other issues, but just letting you know, those links were sent and we will resend them. Thank you, Ms. Domingos. Next, we will go to, let me see if Mary Best is here. Mary Best, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Very good. Good evening. My name is Mary Best, as Paul just said. I'm a psychotherapist and a member of the Racial Justice Coalition. I want to address, as many others have, that the board's mission and stated commitment to public confidence, to increasing public confidence in law enforcement by investigating citizen complaints, as well as looking into law enforcement's patterns of discrimination and inequity impacting our communities of color especially. Your own studies have confirmed that racial discrimination and inequity is of critical concern in how our citizens are treated when engaged with law enforcement. So it really is unsettling that board member Ms. Buki Domingos, recently appointed only 8 months ago, is not being retained. From regularly attending these meetings, I've seen Ms. Domingo provide leadership to address patterns of racial injustice and inequity in this law enforcement engagement with people of color. That she's not being retained in the face of this contribution that she's made is beyond my understanding. We're in a moment where we have an opportunity in our community to address a long history of unequal treatment of our Black and Latinx and Asian and gender different brothers and sisters. So when an experienced, knowledgeable medical professional, a woman of color like Ms. Domingos, provides leadership and commitment to address these wrongs and improve public confidence in law enforcement, when she's not retained, this really speaks volumes about the board's and the county's commitment to racial justice and equity for all San Diegans. I believe the public deserves an explanation for decisions made in the case of this decision not to retain her, and I believe she and our community deserve no less. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Best. Next, we'll go to Francine Maxwell. Ms. Maxwell, are you there?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you so much. Francine Maxwell, Chairwoman, Black Women and Men United. I'm concerned that a Black woman is having her voice silenced after 8 months. The community, the region has said, stand behind Black women, lift Black women's voices. The struggle for a Black woman in this society is real. I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to read the backup, but there has to be a reason why something for 8 months, someone donating their time, is being questioned. We all believe in volunteerism. We know that there's not many people that join boards and commissions and can really give insight, because you go and you gather the community's voice and then you sit in your seat and you speak for their community. Many people say that they want to have a fully transparent, open, and honest dialogue, but actions are not matching what people are saying. The community is trying to build trust. We're excited about the CLERB and the things that are going to be moving in this direction, but we really need all oars in the water to make this boat move. So please reconsider what's occurring and don't stifle the voice of this strong Black woman. On behalf of Black Men and Women United, we stand with Buki Dominguez. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. Next, we will go to Catherine. Catherine, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Catherine Cox. I'm a local activist with Unity Runners. Just wanted to take time to just say how shocked and disgusted that I am that you've chosen to not allow Buki to continue her term. The community is grieving this loss. I think this is a very poor decision on your behalf, and I truly believe that her voice needs to be heard and it should be heard. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Next, we will go to Mr. Miller, Yusuf Miller. Mr. Miller.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is Yusuf Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition and the Racial Justice Coalition of San Diego. I'm extremely disappointed and saddened at the end of the term for Ms. Domingos. She has been a finger on the pulse of the community. She has championed reform measures that will move forward all of us in this realm of social justice. Her work on the town halls dealing with race and equity was deliberate and intentional to move the social justice climate forward in our county. Her service was transformative, and her absence of Ms. Domingos will only damage and diminish our path forward in the justice and equity. During this crisis of in-custody deaths, during this crisis of disparity in arrests, during this crisis of complaints, we cannot and should not lose such a valuable voice of the community. Thank you.
Mr. Miller. Next, we will go to, I have three requests. I have three statements to be read into the record, but first I want to see Robin Sales. Robin Sales has made a request to speak. Bear with me here for a second. Miss Sales, are you there?
Yes, I am. I've been attending and speaking at your meetings since November 2020, when no one used to show up at your meetings. I'm co-founder of Showing Up for Racial Justice North County and a racial justice advocate. I am here to express my gratitude to Buki Domingos for bringing light into the shadows of the CLERB. Since her appointment by Supervisor Lawson Reamer, she has held the CLERB to a higher standard, not only because of her medical expertise, but by shining a light on the need to examine the role of bias by the Sheriff's Department. Her stewardship of the Racial Disparity, Racial Profiling, and Implicit Bias Ad Hoc Committee with Tim Ware brought forth policy recommendations on April 6th to the Sheriff's Department for the purpose of identifying opportunities for and making recommendations to the sheriff to reduce racially disparate policing practices, thereby extending the reach and relevance of the CLERB. In sync with the JLAC report, the CPE, and the University of Chicago reports, which clearly indicted the Sheriff's Department for the egregious deaths in county jails, excessive use of force, and biased policing, as well as the CLERB's lack of oversight, this committee has made recommendations for changes this body could make if it had the will and the political backing of the Board of Supervisors. Ms. Domingos has brought honesty, integrity, determination, and intelligence to her role, and I, like others, wonder why she was not asked to continue on. It's suspect to me. She's a strong Black woman who we thank for her community service, but shoot down when she is vocal. I hope that you will recognize her contributions to the CLERB and carry on her work. She will be missed by those of us who believe that equity in policing and in the courts is in the best interests of all San Diegans. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Doris Payne. Doris Payne. Bear with me for a second here, see if we can, here she is. Doris Payne, are you there?
Yes,
Your time
my
starts
name is
now.
Doris Payne. I'm a member of Surge, North County, San Diego, and have been a resident of San Diego County for 12 years. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and for your continued work in the community. I would like to ask if Kellyanne Martinez has ever expressed any opinions about CLERB. I would also like to ask the board to have her attend an upcoming meeting and talk specifically about what changes she has made in her current role and what new initiatives she has pushed that go beyond those of former Sheriff Gore. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Dr. Tom Packard. Dr. Packard. Tom Packard.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, my name's Tom Packard. I'm a member of the Showing Up for Racial Justice North County group. At your April meeting, I shared my sense of outrage regarding the increasing number of jail deaths and wondered if any of you share such strong concerns. I've heard concerns expressed strongly by Buki Domingos and occasionally by others, but has this felt broadly enough for you to put more pressure on the sheriff to act? In this vein, the announcement that Buki Domingos will be leaving the CLERB heightens my concern, as she has been one who has consistently advocated actions regarding systemic rather than procedural issues. A comment at your May meeting by Marianne Pintar regarding examining root causes is a good step in this direction. I appreciated the synopsis of policy recommendations compiled by Mr. Parker. I hope you analyze recent recommendations from a systemic, not a procedural perspective, to assess the extent to which your department leadership and the resulting organizational culture and other systemic issues are overriding factors affecting the extensive problems that you have addressed through your recommendations. I encourage you to push even harder to get the sheriff to respond promptly and proactively to your recommendations and to devote substantive discussions to the larger factors causing problems such as jail deaths and drug use. You have plenty of data and analysis to at least make some preliminary systems level recommendations. When Sheriff Ray attends a meeting, please ask him about the sense of urgency that he feels as a leader, and specifically what he is doing at the systems level to create meaningful change. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Packard. I now have three statements to read into the record, and not seeing any, well, actually, we have one additional request to speak, and that will be Dave Myers. Mr. Myers, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Well, number one, I would just like to speak about the makeup of the committee, specifically in favor of the outstanding work that I've seen Buki Dominguez contribute to this board. I spent 33 years in the San Diego Sheriff's Department and essentially grew up with CLERB oversight. I have seen significant changes come just in the last few years and just within the last year when it comes to accountability and transparency within the County Law Enforcement Review Board. And that is so critical to the public's trust of the very nature of law enforcement and the need for law enforcement in this county. But there must be accountability. Buki, as a board member, has done more to bring awareness and transparency to this board than I have seen, not including other board members currently, but in the previous 33 years. And it's profoundly sad to see that she is no longer going to be a CLERB member. And it's absolutely a travesty that we are not going to have her voice, her compassion, her understanding and belief in the system to want to be there in the first place. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Heather Friedman. Heather Friedman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I just want to say that I agree with everything that has already been said. Buki works for justice with her heart and her soul. And I think it's extremely wrong for her not to continue with CLERB. And basically, I'm not in good health right now, so that's all I can say, but I support Buki big time.
Thank you. Okay, I don't believe there are any requests to speak, so I'm going to read the 3 comments into the record. The first is from Julia Darling. Julia Darling says, "I'm disappointed that Buki Domingos is not being allowed to continue her position in CLERB. She has medical expertise and lived experiences that make her an asset to the board, at least if the intention is to truly improve the functioning of the Sheriff's Department in San Diego. Change can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary. With our county having the highest in custody death rate in the state, it is imperative that CLERB be tasked with taking a closer look at these deaths and uncover many unexplained circumstances that have led to this statistic. I'm also in favor of getting approval for CLERB to access medical staff and records to more fully understand these situations. In addition, the disparity in stops of people of color versus whites should be the subject of further investigation and subsequent change. Ms. Domingos is eminently qualified to continue to fulfill a role on this commission." Again, that was from Julia Darling. Next, Debbie Kamens. "I'm ready to express my great disappointment that Buki Domingos has not been asked to return to CLERB. She's proven her commitment to improving oversight of law enforcement and protecting the lives and health of those in custody. Ms. Domingos is a highly knowledgeable, insightful community voice and a medical professional. She's effectively and professionally navigated through discussions of difficult subjects during CLERB meetings. Her fortitude and abilities give hope to distraught families and concerned community members such as myself, who are gravely troubled that much more progress has not resulted from CLERB's efforts, despite the hard work of its members. I appreciate the challenging work I watch you do, but not having Ms. Domingos continue to support that work alongside you seems like a loss. I, and I'm sure the public, would like a meaningful explanation for why this decision has been made. I hope you will seek and discuss that explanation. Thank you." Finally, from Natalie Nashot. "Hi, CLERB. My name is Natalie Nashot, and I'm from zip code 92131. My pronouns are she, hers, and hers. She, her, and hers. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and your continued work in the community. As you know, another life was lost in San Diego County jails this month, the 10th loss this year. As the Union Tribune notes on May 25th, this extends the deadliest spate of in-custody fatalities in decades. San Diego County has the highest rate of excess deaths in the state, notably outstripping the 12 largest counties in California. The department claims it's implementing policies to prevent further deaths, yet remains on track for more fatalities in 2022 than in 2021, which was its deadliest year since 1999. I urge CLERB to invite Sheriff Ray to share a detailed account of how they have implemented these policies so far, his plan of action over the next 7 months, including how the department will track results of policy changes. I would also like to hear how Sheriff Ray will transition these efforts to Kelly Martinez and their collaboration to ensure the continued work is done to change the horrific state of our county jails. In addition, I'm also very sad to hear that Ms. Domingos' last meeting with CLERB is today. Thank you, Ms. Domingos, for the voice, insights, and actions you brought to change the racial inequities in San Diego's system." Those are the 3 comments I have. I do see one additional request to speak. William Keith. William Keith. William Keith, there you go.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good. We can hear you now.
Okay. I'm going to address the in-custody deaths, but before I do that, I want to thank Miss Ellen Bohan, special investigator, and the rest of the CLERB for giving me the opportunity to speak. In crafting the statement, I want this board to know I was very aware within myself of not bringing prejudice to those San Diego Sheriff Department employees who were good. My prepared statement, I'll be under 3 minutes. My name is William Keith. I was born at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan, New York City. Chuck Berry's sister raised me in the foster care system. My dad is a late singer-entertainer you all may know as Little Richard Pennyman. My religious belief system originates inside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, also known as a cult. I understand firsthand programming or mind control techniques used. I love most sports. In the year 1978, heroin, cocaine, marijuana, and a host of drugs made their way into the county jail system. I never was aware of dead bodies as a result of drugs in the county jail system until at least the late 90s. In the whole of the year 2013, at the George Bailey Detention Facility, wherever I was housed, I witnessed way too many foul medical man down situations and other situations where staff may have been late in saving a life. In January or February 2014, before I left the George Bailey Detention Facility, I was prescribed a heart medication. I have no history of heart problems. I could not help but notice the programming techniques used by certain sheriff's deputies that mimic programming used inside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Way too many inmates assaults ordered in one form, fashion, or another as a result of that programming by the sheriff's deputies working the bubble. By the way, I was told that the Citizens Review Board does not hold any real power. I believe one whom holds the truth holds the power. If anyone may have any questions, I will answer in the most truthful way possible. I ask for accountability, and I have suffered and continue to suffer retaliation at this time for what I just said to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keith. Vice Chair Delaney, that concludes public comment.
Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Our next agenda item is approval of the April 12, 22 minutes. Are there any revisions? If not, call for a motion. GI?
So move.
Okay, do we have a second? Bonnie? Okay. Can we do a hand vote or do we need to do a roll call vote? Council?
Should be a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call. Paul, could you call roll, please?
Sure. Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
Ms. Domingos.
Abstain.
Ms. Keen-Ayub.
Yes.
Ms. King. Ms. King.
Yes.
Ms. Pintar.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And our next is May 10, 2022 minutes. Any revisions? If not, I'll call for a motion.
So moved.
Ms. Bonnie, Ms. King, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. All right. All those in favor? Sorry. Paul, could you call roll, please?
Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
Ms. Domingos.
Dang.
Ms. Keen-Ayub.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Ms. Pintar.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Next agenda item is a presentation and training. CLERB 2022 operational plan. Mr. Parker?
All right, folks, I'm trying to get there. My apologies. I'm trying to share my screen, but not really having much luck. So what I'll do.
I can see it.
You can see the op plan. Oh, there you go. I guess I am having luck. All right. So basically, this is every year CLERB puts together an operation plan for the next 2 fiscal years. At this point, what I'm going to tell you, or what we're going to go over basically is for the next fiscal year. It's the same presentation that I made to the Board of Supervisors 2 weeks ago. And so this is our opportunity to present that plan. And we believe that the more folks know exactly what we do, what we're supposed to be doing, the better services and more relevant and appropriate services that we can provide to the community and to the departments and the complainants. So next, bear with me here. So as we all know, I think all of us, at least on the board, are aware of this, but for the members of the public, here's the overview, right? This is what we're here to do. The complaints of misconduct, of course, only about sworn members of the department. We need signed complaints for that as of right now. And then we have these other categories that we don't need signed complaints for. As we know, the deaths related to any activity of a sworn officer, any discharge of firearm, use of force resulting in great bodily injury, and any use of force at a protest or other event protected by the First Amendment. We also conduct, we'll be getting our to conduct inspections of the detention facility, the adult detention facilities run by the Sheriff's Department. That will occur this year. We've never done it before. We've had the ability, but we've never done it. And all of this is the intention to increase transparency and the public's trust in holding peace officers accountable for their actions. So also you should know, and I think everybody on the call knows, that we do make policy and procedure recommendations. Now, the departments are not mandated to respond to them, but as of right now, they do. We have the ability to look at any policy and procedure, not just those that are case specific. One of the things that has not been done by this board and that I'm going to implement, it does say that we can make policy and procedure recommendations to the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department, but we also can make those and make sure that the Board of Supervisors is aware of those. And when I made this presentation to the Board of Supervisors, there was an interest from one of the supervisors to have me come in maybe every 6 months, give an overview of the policy recommendations that CLERB has made, and an overview of the responses that the departments have provided, whether they implemented them. If so, great. If not, why not? So that is something that we're going to be doing and implementing as well. As we all know, and it was mentioned already, we're advisory only, and we are an advocate for the facts. We're not an advocate for complainants, for deputies. We're an advocate for the facts. And sometimes that leads to a lot of confusion as to why CLERB is making a recommendation, why CLERB staff is making a recommendation. Many times, the only time we can make a recommendation is if a policy or a law has been violated, if we can sustain a finding. That's the bottom line. Despite the fact that we may not like what happened, we may think it was wrong. That's where we have to draw the line at this point. Okay, so just so everybody understands that. If we had a vision statement, it'd be something along the lines of to improve and ensure just and equitable law enforcement and detention services provided by the Sheriff's Department and Probation Department. So what's the accomplishment? Again, everybody on the call knows that over the last fiscal year, we've had a lot of accomplishments actually, due to the members of the board, due to the support of the Board of Supervisors, due to the working relationships with the departments that we oversee, and due, last but not least, to the members of the community, of course. We were more proactive and relevant and communicative than ever. We've conducted many, many outreach activities. All of our complaints and deaths and other incidents were completed. Our investigations were completed prior to the Peace Officer Bill of Rights timeout date. Our goal was to make 12 policy and procedure recommendations to the Sheriff's and Probation Departments. We did that last year, and everyone needs to know, and I think that you do know, we made 14 in April of this year alone. It will continue to be my primary focus, because I do believe that that is the true way, with the constraints on transparency, so that the community really doesn't know what goes on in closed session, doesn't know the content of the complaints, doesn't know, as far as the investigations, does not see the work and what's being considered by the investigators. So we are hamstrung, and we're hopeful that there's an assembly bill passing that will allow that to not occur anymore. But in the meantime, we believe that the only way we can be truly transparent is to provide those redacted versions on the agendas, but to engage in dialogue with the departments about policy and procedure recommendations. And we believe we've been pretty successful at that, as you'll see in a little bit. So looking forward this next year, right? It's going to be a changing year. As I think we all know, there's a lot going on here at CLERB, and as far as our staffing and our focus and our caseload. So we will obviously want to continue our outreach activities, obviously, continue to talk to community groups, city councils, human relations commission, you name it. I'm willing, if the community or groups would want me, to come out and talk about it. The Board of Supervisors, we already talked about the policy and procedure recommendations. Now, trends related to deaths in custody. We're gonna have a little bit more information about that at the next, in item number 4B, in response to a board member query last month. But I think everyone can see that we have done our independent investigations into deaths and compiling data, and this board has given me the ability or the authority to try to obtain additional monies to do further research into the deaths in custody. We'll continue to do that. As has been previously mentioned, and when you talk about a detailed plan to reduce the likelihood of racially disparate law enforcement practices, that did stem from the ad hoc committee about racial disparity and racial profiling. And we were able to give at least 5 recommendations from that committee approved by the board to talk about things that we wholeheartedly believe need to occur. Now, we don't have a response to those yet, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. As far as what we are doing, as far as policy recommendations to help prevent deaths in custody, again, as has been mentioned and will continue to be mentioned probably forever. CLERB has not done a good job in the past about deaths in custody. And of course, we dismissed 22 death cases in 2017. Unfortunately, that is exactly what happened. But this year, this tenure of this executive officer, this board of supervisors, we have made, not only have we prioritized our death investigations, and quite frankly, not that the goal is to sustain, and I think that's another thing that I hope that everybody understands, that our goal is not to find something wrong. Our goal is to find the facts. And if those facts lead to something that could have been done better, or that were wrong, or it was criminal or a policy recommendation, we make those appropriate recommendations. We believe that our role is to hold the department accountable, to increase their ability to be as transparent as possible, and for us to, by making policy and procedure recommendations, to assist them in eliminating deaths in custody. So because of that, we've made several recommendations. We have entered into an MOU to go out to death scenes. We're doing it currently. I've been to 10 since February. We made a recommendation for the department to provide naloxone to inmates. We've made a recommendation about fentanyl dog usage and the screening of visitors, inmates, and staff. We made a recommendation for the department to increase or improve their family liaison protocol. We made a recommendation for them to stop sealing cases. We made a recommendation for them to clarify the safety check protocol. We made recommendations for them to look at the body scanner, funding, who's going to get scanned, where, when, things along those lines. Despite all of the Sheriff's Department's efforts to reduce drugs in jail, we all know it's a problem in the community, it's a problem in the jails, and we are committed to assist the department with recommendations and our inspections and anything else that we can do that will help the department to reduce or eliminate those deaths in jail, and we'll continue to do that. We will also make recommendations about the elimination of vehicle pursuits, which we'll talk about in a little bit, for nonviolent offenses, and again, the lower level offenses, which primarily target community of color. We made recommendations for that. So these are going to be continued our focus: the deaths, racial disparity, low-level offenses, and then the case investigations resulting in maybe some policy and procedure changes and holding folks accountable. So as far as our key performance measures, really, it's very difficult to have any performance measures because our cases are each different, right? The investigators and I talk about it all the time, so we have to implement something internally to better able to assess, investigator caseload and timeliness of completion and whatnot. But right now we just have very generic, here's the deal, here's the number of cases we've done, here's the ones we processed the complaints within 2 working days, whatever, right? Death investigations. This is something that definitely can be improved upon. And I look forward to working with our new admin analyst after July to do so. As far as our general fund expenditure, our budget has gone up from 1.6 to 1.7 million with the addition of admin analysts. That's what we're hoping that when the board finally adopts the budget, we'll up to 1.7 with 9, with the equivalent of 9 full-time people. Now, again, that's going to continue to be assessed by me while we look at what our jurisdiction. I will continue to fight as long as I'm here for jurisdiction over medical and mental health care folks to provide that care. We've talked about it every month. And so obviously our staffing will have to go up, our budget will have to go up. We'll have specialized people to be able to do that if that is provided to us. And if there are any additional jurisdictional expansions or changes or anything like that, we'll assess accordingly. So alignment to the strategic plan. The county has a strategic plan. And so we've talked a little bit about all of this, but how we align, obviously we continue to telework for the sustainability component. We continue to have these meetings. We say they're hybrid. Ultimately, when this emergency is over and we go back to in-person meetings, we will continue to have the meetings also virtually. It expands the ability for folks in the community to attend our meetings and have their voices heard. We'll continue to analyze the overall trends for deaths in custody. And then obviously we support an increase in transparency in the survey and oversight process. As I mentioned to you before, there's a bill making its way through in Sacramento that will do that if it passes. It will be a substantial change to all survey and oversight in the state. And again, my belief is the community will finally be able to see the big picture of what it is that we do. Because right now, you don't see what goes on in closed session. You don't know what's talked about. You don't know the work that's been that goes on behind the scenes and the decisions that are made for the investigative reports. Quite frankly, it's a disservice to anybody involved in survey and oversight, not the least of which are the complainants, not the least of which are the people who have died, and also the folks that have service provided to them in the deputies and probation officers. But finally, the community. The community has no idea. I mean, I've heard it here said several times tonight how worthless this organization is. If we had some transparency, you'd be able to see exactly what's going on so that folks would maybe have a differing view of that. Understood though, understood. So next, we'll talk about the community outreach. And we've already mentioned we'll continue to do that, right? And then the justice component, we've already talked about all the things that we've done already, and we will continue to do that to align with the strategic plan. And with that, absent any questions, that will conclude my presentation for the op plan. Ms. Domingos, I
Mr.
believe.
Parker, before we do that, are there any public comments?
Bear with me for a minute. Let me try to figure out my screen for a second.
Okay.
I've been trying to say something.
Cookie, can Mr. Minkus, let's wait for just see if there's any public comments, and then I'll be happy to call on you in just a second.
And Mr. Mingus, I'm sorry. While I was talking, I don't see anyone. I just see my
Okay.
screen.
Great. Mr. Mingus, go ahead.
So there is a lot of silencing going on tonight. People have been trying to speak and they cannot speak, and I have been receiving messages. What's going on with the meeting? Is it closed? Are you guys in closed session? Mr. Parker, I ask you humbly that those who are trying to speak, you please let them speak. This is what CLERB is all about. I understand that I have been silenced, that is fine, but I'm just one tiny little voice. Please let the community speak tonight. We owe them that much.
Ms. Domingos, if I may respond. Vice Chair Delaney, may I respond?
Yes, sure.
For the entire duration of my time here as executive officer, I have never, not one time, shut anyone out, stopped anyone from talking, not ever. Matter of fact, I've given too much time. I will admit it, over the 3 minutes. And as far as tonight goes, I've read every comment. I have asked for every public request to speak, and I have done so, Mr. Mingus, as I've done every month. I now see that there's a request to speak from Ms. Maxwell, and I would love to have Ms. Maxwell speak if it's pertaining to this item. But please, Mr. Mingus, I'm all in with having the community speak. Always have been. I will continue to do so as long as I'm here, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Mr. Parker. And I'll be more than happy to send screenshots of people sending me well wishes on Facebook saying, well, I try to speak, but maybe, but just know you have our support. So people are trying to speak and they're not able to speak. At least 3 people have messaged.
Okay.
And it's on social media, so it's not like it's something I'm creating or inventing.
I would like, if there are people attending the meeting tonight that would like to speak, please have them raise their hand, or if you somehow, because we've looked at everyone and I don't see anyone else wanting to speak, and we certainly don't want to discourage anybody from speaking.
Ms. Delaney, Vice Chair Delaney, I see
Yes.
2 requests to speak. One is from Henri Jourdan.
Okay.
Henri? Jourdan? Henri Jourdan, if you could unmute. Well, we will try to come back to Henri Jourdan. Ms. Maxwell, let's try, see if you can speak.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask, this was a wonderful presentation. Just wanted to see if CLERB will be looking at the MOU that was recently signed with the officer involved shootings, because the Sheriff's Department for the first time is doing the investigation for San Diego Police Department and a shooting. So just wanted to see if the presentation will be amended and added. And then also if CLERB plans on checking the MOU with San Diego Police Department as it pertains to the Sheriff Department accepting everybody. So for example, the person, maybe number 9 or 10 that was an in custody death, they were in the intake process. And on that same day, we had 2 deaths in the city of San Diego near City Hall. So they all could have been together, and then, but the police took someone and then intake. This is my conspiracy theory day, but I'm just giving you an example. There's a caveat, and it's due to expire pretty soon, where the Sheriff's Department takes any and everything from San Diego Police Department. So if CLERB could do a deep dive into that and maybe hold a town hall so the conversation can be had, then maybe we can get some things put in place as it pertains to people that they automatically see are sick and not take them to central jail and they pass away in intake. So just wanted to comment, a wonderful presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. We cannot comment because it's not on the agenda. However, we can ask our executive to maybe put that on as something next month.
Okay, next we will try Henri Jourdan again. Henry Jourdan. Okay.
Let's keep him there, and maybe we can go back and see if
Yeah, I will do so.
Okay.
After every item that we discuss, I'll see if we can get him to connect.
And does anyone on CLERB have any comments? I don't, Ms. Pintar?
Paul, thank you for the presentation. I just have a question. I'm sorry if I should know this, but I am not familiar with the early warning. There's a reference to an early warning program, an early warning system. Maybe that's something that was discussed before I joined. Can you explain that to us?
Actually, what it is we notify the departments of the complaints. Basically, we notify them of the complaints and types of complaints that we receive. And then that's really what that is so that they know exactly who complaints are being made about, where they're at, and all that stuff. I will say that we wanted to do a more robust early warning system many years ago, but that was met with we wanted to compile something to give to the department more in depth, and there was maybe that would be a meet and confer type of issue. It's something that we are looking at expanding and readdressing with the departments as we move forward, for the whole purpose of having them, assisting them and identifying and making it more clear, maybe some potential issues that they may be having with their respective personnel.
Okay, and then the only other thing I would ask is that at another meeting, we've got a really long agenda tonight. I would like to know a little bit more about the community outreach aspects that you mentioned. You said that there's a lot happening. I know that you have been going out and you report back to us when you speak to community organizations, but if there is a plan around that for making people more aware of what we do and what we can't do, and just generally making people aware that they can come to us with their complaints, I'd like to learn more about that at a future time.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar. That's obviously something that's needed. I know that the Finance and General Government Group is willing to work with us to get the messaging out to as many different groups as possible, but make sure the messaging is clear, because to this day, it still is not. So thank you.
And I think also when we changed some of our organization, that was one of the things that we wanted to improve on. And of course, COVID kind of put the kibosh on that. But now that things have settled down maybe a little bit, we can start working on more community outreach as far as actually going out into the communities. Okay.
Right, exactly. Having community meetings, having the meetings out in the respective communities, not
Correct.
just.
Yeah,
exactly.
to get that word out there. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people that still don't know what we do or who we are.
Well, and that's my fault. You know,
No,
ultimately, that's what it
nobody's
comes down
fault. It's just that something that, we need to work on. And all right, the next one, if we don't have any more comments, would be number B. It's overview of causes and manners of death for San Diego County Detention Facilities related deaths, January 2020 to May 2022. Mr. Parker?
This is in response to a request from Ms. Pintar of Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Campman last month. If you recall, Ms. Pintar had asked him to provide, is there any way he can provide information about the types and manners and causes of death in the facilities, just from the medical examiner's perspective? What do they have on file? So I don't have a presentation to make. I'm just going to give some numbers, and these numbers will be read into the record and reflected accordingly. But this is medical examiner data. Okay, so from 2017 to 2021, that's the information they were able to give me. There are 75 deaths that they have listed. The medical examiner's office has listed as occurring in the custody of in the respective detention facilities. So Central Jail, out of those 75, Central had 42, George Bailey 10, Las Colinas 5, South Bay 2, and then Vista 16. So when you're looking at that, obviously the majority of those deaths, and we knew that was going to be the case, are from Central. Now, in reference to we asked for the cause and manner. Well, the medical examiner's office did not provide the exact cause. They provided a grouping. So atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease, they provided the grouping of cardiovascular, right? So and I'll get to those in a minute, just again, this is data from the medical examiner's office. Natural deaths, out of the 75, 33 were natural. 33 were natural. 22 were accident, 12 suicide, 6 homicide, 1 undetermined, and 1 still pending. So let's talk about the naturals. So Central, most of the deaths at Central, 17 were natural, 12 were accidental, 7 suicides, a couple of homicides as well. The natural deaths, the medical examiner has broken down to 33 deaths. The main category of natural deaths for the 33 natural ones are cardiovascular related, and the 12 out of the 33. The next category, highest number of categories, was infectious disease, so COVID or AIDS, something along those lines. That was 5. And then there are miscellaneous ones, right? Liver disease, pulmonary, renal, cancer, central nervous system, chronic alcohol, chronic drug, those things that are natural deaths that are not due to an acute situation. So that's the overview of the natural deaths. The accidental deaths, as I mentioned, there were 22. 20 of them were related to drugs. 20 out of the 22 were related to drugs. I don't know if those, I'm sure that many of those were illicit drugs, right? Some of them may have been due to medication, but I doubt very much, probably a handful, okay? 1 was an asphyxia related and 1 was choking. So I'm sorry to talk about these types of causes of death during this presentation, but everybody knows that's what we're talking about. So hopefully this information is being received okay. As far as suicide, there were 12. There were 12 in those years out of the 75 deaths. And as you can imagine, all 11 of the 12 were due to hanging. 1 was an undetermined type of death. And then out of the 6 homicides, 4 were blunt force, so assaultive behavior. 1 was asphyxia related, and then 1 was restraint related. And that restraint related was that means that was the restraint applied by law enforcement. Those deaths are listed as homicide if the restraint is in any way connected to the death. As far as the breakdown for male and female, out of the 75, 70 were male and 5 female. The race, out of the 75, 36 were white, 18 were Latinx, and 12 were Black. There were, Native American were 2, other was 1, Filipino 2, biracial 2. So that's the general information and all that will be into the record. I didn't want to get too deep into it because we're looking again to do some additional data compilation, break down even more of when the person is booked, when they become ill or die, right? That's a major thing that we're going to be looking at as well. But this is the medical examiner information. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments? Any clerk comments?
There is a member of the public. There are two members of the public who wish to speak after. If you want to take them first or clerk comments.
Let's do the members of the public first, please.
Ms. Maxwell.
Good evening. If we're going to have a second bite at the apple for the medical examiners, the community was asking specifically, how come things are kept sealed for such just a long time? And then also how long it takes to move from natural to something else. And so those are the types of things that the community, if there's a town hall with the medical examiner doing a presentation, we wanted to get, the understanding of why so many things are sealed as it pertains to law enforcement and deaths, how long it takes for it to move from natural to something else, because everything is labeled natural from a community perspective as we're outside watching inward. And if we're going to get a second bite of the apple and you're going to do something down the road with the medical examiner, if that person can definitely have that in their presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Yusuf Miller. Mr. Miller.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. When it comes to the natural deaths, the 33 natural deaths, I think a lot of the people that we represent in social justice arenas are people who may appear to be natural death, but from neglect. For example, there are people we've had that didn't receive their heart medication, and there's people that haven't received their seizure medication. One person had a seizure, came off the bed and was in a coma. So these things are natural deaths, but I think there's a category missing when it comes to whether this was the responsibility of someone else that caused this natural death or natural occurrence to happen by neglect. So I think there needs to be some more refinement to that. A lot of the families that we represent are not people that just have liver cirrhosis or somebody with kidney disease. There are people who had problems that were due to neglect of either medical staff or deputies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
I think this is also another reason why we are pushing for oversight on medical. Get a clearer picture of what is going on. Is there any, are there any other public comments?
Not that I see.
Okay, CLERB members, any comments? Okay.
Comment regarding,
That Buki?
no, that's Mr. Mingos.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mingos.
I do have a comment.
Okay.
So one of my very first CLERB meetings, I had an issue with the constant use of the word natural death. And I think somebody from the medical examiner's office came, I think it was 2 meetings ago or last meeting, I don't quite remember. And they had explained exactly why it was classified as natural death, which makes a lot of sense. Meaning there was no acute case or situation. There was the person's heart either stopped beating or they had respiratory failure, which will be deemed natural death. But I also was trying to push for, and I remember using the term neglect, and I got a lot of pushback when I used those terms, almost like no one was willing to take responsibility for the lapse in time before that person got CPR or the Narcan. So I think there is that gray area that also needs to be addressed regarding the natural deaths.
Thank you.
And I also feel that my concern about having access to medical is, as a medical professional myself, I feel very strongly that I need to address this issue. And looking at one of the cases that's actually public now, the Cerner case and the nurse, like that's public, so it's not a secret. The nurse is the one who has been coming to all these hearings and is probably going to be charged. It bothers me because the nurses and folks that work in the detention centers never have the first access to the people that are behind bars. They always need the area safe before they can do their job. So having access to medical is great, but that is not the heart of the problem. They have no interest whatsoever in making mistakes because that's malpractice, that is their license, that is their means of livelihood. So they have a bigger responsibility. So I think it's nice to have access to medical, but I think that is not the issue that is causing these deaths.
Thank you. Ms. Pintar, did you have your hand up?
I did. I took it down. I don't really know how to phrase this question because we don't have any oversight over the medical examiner. But just to follow up on this information, I'm grateful that they provided it. I think that my question that I was posing at the time was, he had provided a certain slide that talked about how certain like traffic accidents, for example, how many traffic accidents had been caused, or how many traffic accidents had happened within a given period of time. And then he used the information, for example, to provide recommendations to the County Board of Supervisors on how to prevent them. And I was hopeful that with, if he has the medical examiner has access to this data, that there might be something that he could recommend to the county or to the sheriff's department or to the board about how to prevent these deaths. I noticed that the two facilities that have the highest number of deaths are both the intake facilities. And just generally my observation has been when we review these cases is that a lot of them happen within a very short period of time after intake. That's not based on hard data. It's just been my general observation. So I don't know that I have a question. I'm just trying to understand how we might use the data to prevent deaths in the jails. That's all.
Thank you. To your point, I think that might be something that our next study on the why of deaths would investigate and cover.
Thank you.
Okay. If no one else has any other comments on that, I'm going to move to the executive officer's report. And if you don't mind, I'd like to go through A through D, A through D, then ask for public comments and then go to the next one and ask for comments. Is that okay, council?
That's fine, but the public would have more time to speak because they're entitled to their time for each item.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to expedite just a little bit, but I do want everyone to have an opportunity to speak as much as they'd like. All right. Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Vice Chair Delaney. On May 11th, I presented an overview of CLERB to the League of Women Voters. On May 16th, myself and Chair Youngflesh attended the first ever Commission on Police Practices CLERB collaboration meeting. The CPP interim executive officer, chair, and vice chair also attended. We discussed areas of similar concerns, and we look to meet monthly. On May 17th, I attended the California Civilian Oversight Association meeting. The purpose of this meeting is to facilitate discussion among numerous civilian oversight leaders in the state. It's a quarterly meeting, and I'll be attending each as we move forward. As we just discussed, I presented the op plan to the Board of Supervisors on May 19th. From May 23rd through June 8th, I attended 5 after-hours community budget meetings, 1 from each supervisorial district. There were questions about in-custody deaths at the District 1 meeting that I was able to speak to from CLERB's perspective. No other comments pertaining to CLERB at any of the other 4 meetings that I attended. On May 25th, I attended another different type of oversight, local oversight meeting, more specific to Southern California. Different group of California civilian oversight practitioners, same kind of purpose is to facilitate discussion among civilian oversight leaders in the state. It too is quarterly. I'll be attending each as we move forward. Also on that day, I attended the county's cloud review committee to receive permission to move forward with creating a CLERB Facebook account for investigatory purposes and a Twitter account for outreach and communication purposes. So that those are in progress. We will be pretty much the gold standard for the Financial General Government Group moving forward to make sure that we're doing these things correctly and that we do them within policy and procedure and make them as most efficient as possible. On June 2nd, the baton was passed from outgoing outside counsel Jim Sandler to incoming outside counsel Wayne Bennett during a meeting with him, me, supervising special investigator Lynn Setzler, and Mr. Sandler. So right now, Mr. Bennett is, in fact, our outside counsel moving forward. As you all know, last week we convened a special meeting to vote on the teleconference option and to create a board officer nominating committee. Attended the Board of Supervisors daytime community budget hearing yesterday. And as far as a special investigator opening, it has been posted. For a first review of applications will occur next week. We have board CLERB member openings still in District 1, District 2, District 3, and those openings are being filled, or the process is being filled and discussed at the county level. I don't have any other update at this point, other than we continue to hope that these vacancies are filled in a timely fashion. Of course, I know that that's the county management is doing everything it can to work with the supervisorial districts to make that happen. And next month at the July 12th CLERB meeting, Sheriff Ray, Assistant Sheriff Adams Hydar, who's responsible for the Detention Services Bureau, and Chief Probation Officer Tamika Nelson will be presenting individually to the CLERB in reference to topics of concern for the respective departments. Pretty much come and speak to the board and answer any questions that the board may have. So in reference to our caseload, attachment B, there were 10 new cases opposed to or compared to 10 from last May. We have 11 cases on tonight's agenda to include 3 death cases, 1 great bodily injury case, and the use of force at a protest event. At the end of May, there were 88 open cases. There were 30 open death cases. We had documents for 13. There, again, 3 are on tonight's agenda. Last month, there were 3 new San Diego Sheriff's Department death cases. 2 were at Central Jail, and 1 was related to Court Services Bureau. There are still 13 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury without a complaint. None were reported in May. 1 is on tonight's agenda. We still have 3 open discharges of firearm without a complaint, and there was 1 use of force at a protest or First Amendment protected event, and it is on tonight's agenda. In reference to the case progress and status report, again, this is something so that the members of the community and the members of CLERB can see exactly where we are with our cases, who's investigating what, the due dates for them, due dates meaning the POBAR, the Peace Officer Bill of Rights due date, and is basically where we are at any given point. And as you can see, we strive, and as I mentioned before, if we don't sign off on a case before the case times out, the POBAR due date, I won't be here. If there are still an occasion where certain cases are signed off in plenty of time, but due to the board member scheduling, it doesn't get to the board members to discuss in closed session where the board can actually do something about it, which is ridiculous. So that is our goal, so that doesn't happen as we continue to streamline our cases. And we are a heck of a lot better than we ever have been. And I think the data in front of you will show that. So that's that. As far as the executive officer correspondence of the full CLERB, due to the busyness of everything this month, I did not send anything out. We are still waiting. And I know the Sheriff's Department is actively working on the 4 policy recommendation responses that we've sent to them that we don't have responses. We received a lot of responses, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. Probation Department is actively working on the staff response to death scenes. I know they're working on that, and they're also working on the use of technology to monitor the health and safety of inmates. So hopefully there'll be some recommendation responses for those items coming up in the near future. Now, as far as the policy recommendation responses that we did receive this month, and you'll see that there are many. I'll just briefly go over them. They were attachments to our agenda.
Mr. Parker,
Yeah.
let's hold off on that for just a second, and let's see if there's any community comments on just A through D. Is that okay?
I see no comments.
Okay, any CLERB comments? Okay, thank you.
So in reference to the the responses. They're attachments E through K respectively. I'll just give a brief overview because the whole content, some of these are very lengthy responses. So first one, CLERB case 20-113. Recommendation we made was for the Sheriff's Department to revise its detention policy and procedures to mandate proof of life verification for visual checks every 60 minutes during the booking process. The response is they've completely reviewed the policy and discussed it internally, and they believe that the policy already addresses this request as safety checks are conducted during the regular scope of duties in the booking areas while an incarcerated person is completing the booking process. So the policy states in part, safety checks of incarcerated persons consist of looking at the incarcerated person for any obvious signs of medical distress, trauma, or criminal activity, and they shall be conducted at least once within every 60-minute time period. It also says, the policy also says that safety checks shall be completed in all non-housing locations that are assigned as cells or holding areas for incarcerated persons, even when unoccupied. So one of the concerns was sworn staff shall, basically regarding a proof of life check every 60 minutes. Oftentimes individuals who come into custody have been away for a prolonged period of time, depending on the purpose of contact and length of preliminary investigation and interview. Prior to going into a housing area, this area is where individuals wait for, in some cases, an extended amount of time. It could be there for several days and becomes a place to rest. If these individuals were wakened every hour, it could cause disruption and conflict by waking individuals every hour. The second recommendation is that they only utilize cells with operable cameras. The response is that they already utilize cells with operable cameras, and they do become occupied rather quickly due to the nature of being the busiest booking facility in the county. So technically, neither one of those recommendations were implemented because they already exist. Sheriff's Department contends that they already exist. So that's that. So 21014. This was a unfortunate situation where a vehicle pursuit had ensued, and a young lady died as a result of the vehicle being pursued colliding with her vehicle. We made the recommendation that deputies shall not initiate or participate in a pursuit in which the only known offense at the time is a nonviolent crime, to include a stolen vehicle. We also recommended that when initiating a pursuit, the deputy must not only consider all public safety factors applicable, but shall, quote, shall, as opposed to the current standard of may, consider the applicable public safety factors listed in the P&P. Sheriff's Department response basically says that they already do that in a sense, because the deputies should weigh the seriousness of the violator's suspected crime against the potential for death or injury if the pursuit is continued. That's part of their vehicle pursuit policy. Frequently, discontinuance of a pursuit is in the interest of public safety, or in the interest of public safety is most appropriate. So they declined to initiate or to implement the nonviolent offense recommendation because their policy basically says that it's up to the deputy still to weigh the seriousness, and that discontinuance of a pursuit is most appropriate for public safety. And then in reference to the shall versus may, the policy is going to remain as may. The policy is in compliance with California Vehicle Code, which states what shall be in a police department's pursuit policy. And so all of those things will continue to be in may. They do receive additional refresher training for pursuits and whatnot, and current laws and whatnot. So those recommendations were not implemented. 21038. And this is a recommendation that we recommended that they update the Detention Service Bureau policy as it pertains to body scanners and require that body scans be completed to include inmates transferred between facilities. And so after they thoroughly reviewed the request and process, they do not feel, Detention Services Bureau personnel do not feel at this time this recommendation can be accommodated due to various operational-like issues. There are a number of daily interfacility transfers, which would slow down the operations. The current staffing levels would not allow for it to happen. And not every one of the facilities have body scanners, so they don't have the funding or whatnot to make that happen. So for those three reasons, that policy recommendation was not implemented. The next policy recommendation was 21039. 078. This is in reference to our recommendation to direct the deputy shall begin recording prior to initiating any law enforcement related contact. This recommendation was not implemented because the policy says that they will do that prior to arriving on scene when responding to a call. So see, there's a difference. When responding to a call for service, So we were saying, do it for initiation of any law enforcement related contact. But at this point, that recommendation will not be implemented at this time because the policy indicates that when they respond to a call, they shall activate. So that will not be implemented at this time. The expansion of the family liaison program, which is where we said, we expressed grave concern that the family members that we've talked to said that they didn't talk to anybody from the department. There was no family liaison person, or not that they could recall. They were not provided updates. They were not given answers to questions during the course of investigation. Prior to receiving our request to mandate, they meet with the family at the conclusion of the investigation into a shooting or use of force or in custody death, to advise the family of the investigative outcome, answer questions, provide information. Prior to the receipt of the recommendation, the department had already begun an internal review. And as a result of that review, specific personnel were assigned these duties and internal mechanisms were implemented. And so therefore, the changes that they have implemented will be sufficient to address CLERB's core concerns. So technically, the policy recommendation has technically been implemented, one would think. And provide inmate access to naloxone. We made the suggestion to make naloxone readily available to all detention facility, incarcerated folks at the detention facilities. Educate the inmates on opiate overdose and its signs, and correct technique for administration of naloxone and performance of CPR. The department already educates the population on the dangers of ingesting any type of drugs. They're committed to preventing the influx of dangerous drugs. And they've created videos for that in reference to fentanyl and any kind of dangerous drugs. They've implemented the drug dog, the Sheriff K9, to detect fentanyl. And that dog also does checks at facilities who can detect other substances such as methamphetamine and heroin. The deputies in patrol and detention facilities carry naloxone, and they are going to implement this request to place naloxone in accessible locations for incarcerated personnel. They've been looking at it prior to the recommendation, but after the recommendation, they are moving forward, and they're in the process of installing a naloxone storage box in each module of each facility. So that recommendation has been implemented. And then finally, the use of technology to monitor health and safety of inmates. Ms. Domingos.
Please finish, Mr. Parker.
Thank you. Use of technology to monitor health and safety of inmates. This is the recommendation. It was a little out there, right? But we were trying to think outside of the box, and we really wanted, we had identified some things that are being implemented in other jurisdictions, smaller jurisdictions to be sure, across the country, but also over in Europe. About using bands, like your Fitbit can tell your pulse and breathing. How come we can't do something for inmates to do that, and maybe to have some kind of monitor inside the cell that would detect the decreased levels of breathing or whatnot. So that's why we made these recommendations for them to look into the technological devices. We made the same recommendation of the probation department as well. So the sheriff's department, they talked about that they are continue to look for the use of technology, continue to do so. We're doing so before, doing so now. They have implemented several technological changes, technological devices, not what we've talked about, but they've talked about what they have done specifically with BW's body-worn camera, Wi-Fi, things along those lines that'll provide better documentation of what's going on. They also, it looks like, as far as procurement and reporting out on how much they cost and the consideration, that all follows the county's policies for doing so. So in theory, they are open to it and they have implemented it. The things we specifically asked for, they did not, but the recommendations were to explore the use of technology, and that is what they have done, and that is what they'll continue to do. So that is accepted. And with that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker. Do we have any public comments?
See none. Oh, wait, I do see one. Hold on one second. Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, when it comes to the recommendations that they've already implemented, they don't take the suggestion because they've already implemented. Do we have some sort of verbiage that says if these things are not followed, then there will be consequences for officers? There are a lot of times we see where the officer shall do this and shall do that, but if they don't, okay, it just goes on a little a file that doesn't really amount to much. So to put some teeth into these reforms, there has to be some consequences for not following it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And next, I see no other public. I see one additional public comment. Miss Maxwell.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, sorry, I hit the wrong button. I just wanted to ask if the CLERB could have a discussion as it pertains to announcements when the sheriff, we've had a conversation and they were so gracious to have the announcements when they're sharing information about in custody deaths, but to offer condolences, understanding that it's a hard time for everybody and law enforcement has been told just the facts, ma'am, speak just for the facts. But we want to begin to build bridges and show human side. And we know that there's incidents. And so if the CLERB could consider maybe having a conversation as it pertains to how the Sheriff's Department communication teams communicates to the public and offer some suggestions. You know, we just recently lost a child in Lemon Grove. And yes, someone is arrested and the juvenile both could not be discussed, but there's a way to write the press release that can begin to start to get people to begin to get healing and things like that. So just wanted to see if CLERB could put that on the agenda for your conversation for later. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. And with that.
Anyone else?
No, I don't see any other members of the.
Ms. Domingos?
Thank you. Listening to your last report or presentation, I am personally alarmed at the amount of resources that I'm hearing law enforcement pouring into establishing naloxone stations. I remember speaking clearly and with probably another board member regarding putting more safety checks in place for people coming into the detention centers, especially staff and sworn officers. I do not hear that in your report. I do not hear that in anything. There is a huge opioid problem, and some are actually benzodiazepines, and some are a cocktail of God knows what comes in there. So it sounds on the outside like people without medical knowledge might probably think it's great that they're setting up these stations to just, attempt to save these people. But if that person is overdosing on methamphetamine or benzodiazepine, that naloxone is useless. So I will humbly suggest at my last meeting that this board looks into those checks, especially for staff, because they're the least scrutinized. I feel the focus has been on the wrong folks, which are those coming in. And we were actually shown the last time how folks are actually checked from head to toe with the scans. So if the officer does their job right, there's no way somebody can even have something in their bowels and walk into that detention center as an inmate or somebody in custody. I think the focus should be on the sworn officers, the medical staff, and all the people down to the janitor. There should be strict checking with the same body scans to make sure that these substances do not enter the detention center. So those funds that they're trying to invest in building those stations that look really beautiful, like it's life-saving measures, they should try to put some of those into properly checking employees at those detention centers before they enter into the building, and make it literally like a firewall. If they're really sincere about change and stopping this overdose behind bars, which clearly are not brought in by the inmates.
Thank you. Ms. Pintar?
I have a question about the response to case number 21014. This is the vehicle pursuit recommendations that we met, that we made, Mr. Parker. The Sheriff's Department response is that they have policies and procedures in place already to keep this from happening, that they use discretion, they have the ability to use their discretion to keep the public safe, especially if it's, depending on what, if the known offense, for example, is a nonviolent crime. In this particular case, the case that we referred to in which the woman was killed, was there an investigation? I assume there was, from the Sheriff's Department. And was that made public? I don't know the answer. I don't recall if they looked at what happened this day and said the deputies followed the procedures that are in place, and this was, they didn't follow procedures, or they did, and the accident still occurred. I'm troubled by the fact that this just happened, and they're saying that the policies that are in place now that exist are intended to keep it from happening. So do you know the answer to that?
Well, I won't know if there's been, I'm certain that there was an investigation, an administrative investigation, right, into the actions of the deputies, just like we did. And we did not find fault based on the way the policy was written. We did not find, a recommendation for sustained, if I remember correctly. So I would imagine, the department, we don't know the outcome of their internal investigations. I do know that no criminal charges were filed in that case against the deputies involved. I do know that vehicle, and it's been in the media, so it was a stolen vehicle and whatnot. But I don't know the outcome of their internal investigation. However, yes, the policy that's in place now was the policy that was in place then. But we tried to take it one step further. And one of the reasons we also tried to do it too was, talking about maybe tying it into some racial disparity as well, right? So that's where we stand. There are many reasons why a department would not do that, would not implement something along those lines. I can imagine, once that word gets out, then who's going to stop for the police at all? If you don't have to. Because that the departments are not going to chase you. This has been an ongoing debate nationwide. The Sheriff's Department is elected to respond to this recommendation that they are not going to change their current practice because they believe they have the fail-safes. They have in place what's needed to prevent this whenever possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there aren't any more CLERB comments, we'll go to sustained finding pending responses. Mr. Parker?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
There were no sustained finding pending responses.
Oh, there was one.
There was one?
Yeah, there was one. And that's the basic response that we get. So what we do, one of the things that'll come up later when we talk about the San Diegans for Justice recommendations, whenever we recommend a sustained finding, we send a letter to the department with the details about, we named deputy, we name what we sustained, and ask that they use progressive discipline. And so the department has responded saying that they've received the information and they are looking at it administratively and forward up to the chain of command of that respective. So that is one response that we got, and I don't believe we have any more that we're waiting for.
Okay, and the number H?
Yeah, that's it. That's the one we just talked about.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Do we have any comments from?
I don't see any.
Okay. Ms. Pintar, is your hand up or was that an old hand?
Old hand, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, number 6 is board chair's report. I have nothing to report. Chair Youngflesh did not leave anything. I just want to thank our liaisons for being here this evening. And we'll go on to new business. The continuance of teleconferencing meeting option pursuant, to government code section. Council, would you like to read that?
Yes, so if your board wishes to continue teleconferencing, the appropriate motion would be to find that CLERB has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and that state and local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing.
Okay, and do we have a motion? Mr. Wilson? Is that in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Kina, were you seconding that? Okay, Mr. Park, could you call for the vote, please, or roll call, please?
Vice Chair Delaney,
Yes.
Ms. Domingos,
Sorry, abstain.
Ms. Kina,
Yes.
Ms. King, Ms. King,
No.
Ms. Pintar,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
okay. I'm trying to do math. I apologize.
We have 4 in favor, 1
4
opposed.
yes, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
So you need 5 votes to carry a motion, so the motion fails.
Vice Chair Delaney, back to you.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that we have to meet in person? I'm very concerned. There is a lot of COVID going around right now. I think we put ourselves in harm's way, along with the fact that gas is now almost $7 a gallon. I'd like us to reconsider. Can we do that?
There's been a motion that's been voted on. If your board wanted to have a special meeting in the future to reconsider this, that would be possible.
Can someone make another motion or of the same motion or no?
Yeah, it could be a motion for reconsideration.
Okay.
But I will note that the gas prices is not a legitimate basis under this.
You're right. You're right. It's not. My concern is that COVID is everywhere right now. And I think it's dangerous for us to be meeting in person right now. That's my thought. So I'd like to motion to reconsider. Ms. Domingos?
I would like to comment before the motion is made. Yeah. So
let me hang on a second. I think I have to get a second and then we can have comments. Is that correct? Okay, is there a second on my motion? Ms. Kino, is that a second? Okay, we have a first and second. Okay, Mr. Domingos.
Yeah, I think we are almost 3 years into the pandemic. A lot of people are vaccinated. We know how to deal with this thing and treat it. Folks that are getting sick are not as sick as the first wave. I think it's time for the CLERB to meet with in person and also encourage members of the public to also meet in person. I think the Zoom, a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of boards and people have reopened. We have N95, CVS gives them, 3 per household for free. All you have to do is just walk in there. There's hand sanitizer. I do not see why folks cannot meet in person. And this is coming from somebody who works with actively dying COVID patients.
Thank you for your comments. I'm going to respectfully disagree. All right, we have a motion and we have a second.
Mr. Parker, do we need to go to the public?
I don't see any public. I see 1 public comment now. Yes,
okay.
Just came up.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar.
And Vice Chair Delaney, could you remind me of the motion, please?
The motion that is reconsider to meet virtually.
All right, thank you. And we're going to go to Jay Keeley. Jay Keeley.
Yeah, hi. I'm a COVID investigator, and I talk to a lot of people that are getting very ill, and there are still a lot of people dying. There are at least 5,000 deaths a day in the United States just on BA2.12.1, which is Omicron. And there's 2 more variants coming through, BA4 and BA5. So I would continue to go virtual for a while, because even if you're vaccinated, people are still getting sick. I'm recommending people go to monoclonal infusions every day because they're so ill. So I would reconsider that. Thank you. I'm a registered nurse, licensed public health nurse. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Yes, as some of you know, I have a compromised immune system. And it's very dangerous for me to be out in public. So I'm asking under the American Disabilities Act for an accommodation for continuing to do this by Zoom.
I appreciate it. I think a lot of us have. I have a husband that's immune compromised. The last thing I want to do is bring this down or back to him as well.
And I'd like to point out that I've had direct family members who've been fully vaccinated and boosted come down with COVID.
Absolutely. This is not, it's not a minor illness to some people. And
It's not minor to me.
No, and you don't.
As my oncologist told me, if I get it, I'm dead.
Correct. So I know we want to meet in person, but I think we need to have a little bit of grace for other people as well. So we have a first and a second. Do we have any other comments from CLERB members? Okay, Mr. Parker, could you roll call, please?
Vice Chair Delaney,
Yes.
Ms. Domingos,
Abstain.
Ms. Keen-Ayub,
Yes.
Ms. Kank,
No.
Ms. Pintar,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
It's the same vote as before. 4 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain.
Mr. Mingos?
A compromise could be a hybrid version. Those that are not comfortable showing up in person, but I don't know if this is something that council would allow. But those who are not comfortable showing up in person because of healthcare issues may attend the meeting virtually, and those who are comfortable may show up to the meetings socially distanced and maxed up. That's a compromise. And this is also, again, I repeat, coming from a registered nurse who works hospice with actively dying COVID patients.
Thank you, Mr. Mingos. Appreciate that. Council, can we do that?
That is an option. That's what the Board of Supervisors does, but you would still have to adopt the same motion that was voted on. Those findings still need to be made.
So we make those findings, but then we tell everyone, we say that you can do it virtually, or you can come in person, or do we have to make a second motion?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Oh, if we adopt that language, then they're virtual, but do we have to have another motion saying that we are off, it's hybrid?
I think that would be up to Mr. Parker if he needs direction from CLERB to set up an in-person meeting as well.
Okay. I'm not even sure how many people would show. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah, I'm interested in the legality of the committee refusing to make an accommodation for somebody who's 100% disabled and has a compromised immune system.
Well, let's try it again. I don't know what that is, but let's go back and have another, Ms. Pintar.
I'd like to ask council if we can make a motion to have a subsequent meeting when there's other board members available to provide a quorum. Is that possible?
So in other words, you'd like to have a special meeting to decide.
Yes.
Are we 30 days out anyway, Paul?
We're within the 30 days. Yes.
Do I have the ability as the acting chair tonight to call a special meeting for this?
The chair can call a special meeting, or the board can request it and the chair can approve it.
Okay, I'd like to call a special meeting then to discuss this further when there's more CLERB members. Let's see, we are 14th. What's next? Can we discuss the date, or do we have to do that offline?
Paul should schedule a date with your input.
Okay, Paul and I will talk, we'll discuss that. Do we need a motion for this? Or am I able to just do that?
You can call a meeting without a motion.
Okay, so I'm calling a special meeting to further discuss this. And Mr. Parker and I will get together and decide on the date. Okay, our next agenda item is election of officers.
Real quick, Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
I see a member of the public, Ms. Best, has her hand up. I don't know if that's a reference to this item or next item, but it just came up, so.
Okay, let's go ahead and hear from her before we go to the next one.
Ms. Best?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for having this full discussion about how CLERB will be meeting. What I would like to ask, and it's a question, is in addition to medical considerations, as Mr. Wilson has brought up and others of you, the desire and the encouragement of public comment participation and public participation. I'm a therapist, and very often I will have something in the afternoon and in the evening, and I really appreciate being able to come on and have that hour or that hour and a half. So if that's not if that's not something that could even be considered, but I just wanted to put that out because I don't know whether you want to encourage public participation in the comments and that more active participation, because I would be concerned that you would have less participation if it was only in person and not in person and hybrid. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice Chair Delaney?
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Delaney?
Yes.
When we were considering this before, when we thought that everything was going to go away several months ago, we had set up the ability, at least we did a couple of months ago, to make sure that we could have the in-person meetings, but also, because ultimately we're going to get back to in-person meetings at some point, also to have the ability to continue to put them out virtually, as pretty much what Ms. Best was saying. So we figured out, we think we have a way to do that. Because we want to encourage the community participation and attendance, so that hopefully alleviates some concerns. And
I think that's a great idea. We do that for other meetings, boards that I'm involved in, and those that want to come in person do, and those that want to attend virtually. Some people can't get away from their kids or whatever, and this gives the public much greater access to our meetings. So I think that's a great idea to continue with that. Okay, so the nominations. We had a committee chair meeting. The nominating subcommittee submits the following: for chair, vice chair, Eileen Delaney; for chair, for vice chair, Mary Ann Pintar; and for secretary, we have Pastor Spriggs and Bonnie King, who has expressed interest. So I'll go to the board chair first. For chair, Eileen Delaney. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Okay, if there are no more nominations for the office of chair, we'll close the nomination and proceed to elect the chair. Mr. Parker, could you call roll, please?
Vice Chair Delaney?
Yes.
Ms. Domingos?
Abstain.
Actually, I'm just reading this and it says hands. Is that correct?
That's when we were in person, a roll call vote.
Okay. Okay, all right. My apologies, Mr. Parker.
Ms. Keen-Ayub,
Yes.
Ms. Kenk,
I'm not sure who's running.
Vice Chair
This is-
Delaney,
We're voting for the chair and the nominee was myself.
Okay, yes.
Ms. Pintar,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Vote passes 5 yes, 0 no, 1 abstain.
Thank you. All right, for vice chair, we have Mary Ann Pintar. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Okay, I'm going to close that then, and we will elect vice chair. Mr. Parker?
Vice Chair Delaney,
Yes.
Ms. Domingos,
No.
Ms. Keen-Ayub,
Yes.
Ms. Kenk,
Yes.
Ms. Pintar,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Vote passes 5 yes, 1 no.
Okay. Okay, and the last one, and I'm supposed to do this in the order. So we have two. We have Pastor Spriggs and Bonnie Kank, so I'll do the first one. Pastor Spriggs, and let's do it differently. Let's start from the bottom up if we could, Mr. Parker.
Mr. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Pintar,
Yes.
Ms. Kenk,
No.
Ms. Keen-Ayub,
I'm sorry, which one are we voting on right now?
Pastor Spriggs.
the secretary, Pastor Spriggs,
No.
Ms. Domingos,
No.
Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
The motion does not carry. It's 3 yes, 3 no.
Okay. Bonnie Kank for secretary.
Am I still starting at the bottom?
Whatever, yeah, it's fine.
Mr. Wilson,
No.
Ms. Pintar,
I'm extremely confused. We are voting on them separately.
Yes, we have to do that. That's the way this instructs me to do that.
Yes.
Ms. Kenk,
Yes.
Ms. Keen-Ayub,
Yes.
Ms. Domingos,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Delaney.
What are we at right now?
4 to 1 yes.
I'm not happy with you, Bonnie. On the other hand, if I don't. No.
So that does not, Ms. Kenk does not carry. So it's 4 yes, 2 no's.
Council? Can we add this to the special meeting?
It can be added, or you can entertain another motion now.
Okay. Mr. Wilson? Or is your dog making a motion, Bonnie? Mr. Wilson, did you want to say something? Okay, I'm going to add this to the special meeting. Okay. Feasibility of the third-party jail administration, Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Vice Chair Delaney. At the last meeting, at the CLERB meeting on May 10th, Ms. Domingos asked me to add as an item on this agenda something regarding working with the County of San Diego staff on the feasibility of third-party oversight in the San Diego County jails. It was basically to bring in the Attorney General's office or assign some kind of special master to provide oversight of the jails due to the number of deaths that have been occurring. So there are obviously a number of outstanding legal, historical, legislative, and operational questions that need to be addressed in order to present the CLERB board with the entire scope of the issue, potential courses of action CLERB may take on it. As such, expertise is needed from County Council, the Office of Strategy and Intergovernmental Affairs, the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, the Office of Evaluation and Performance Analytics, and potentially others. Questions include, but are not limited to, historical precedent, current and pending federal, state, and local laws that govern this issue, and the scope of which decisions and directions actually fall under the jurisdiction of CLERB. So this item, if approved today as written, it will authorize me, the executive officer, and staff to work with any needed county departments to complete a report for your board and return back to present the information for your consideration. So the motion would be direct the executive officer to work with all county departments to produce an informational report, any corresponding recommendations at the next regular CLERB board meeting in reference to this topic. Vice Chair Delaney.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Do we have a motion? Ms. Kina,
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? Mr. Wilson? Okay. Any discussion? Do we have any discussion from the public?
I see no discussion. I see no one. Oh, I see one. Mr. Miller. Oh, bear with me for a second. Mr. Miller.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, if I understand the motion to involve a outside entity to have oversight from the Attorney General's office, then I think this is a great idea. It's one that we think that the Sheriff's Department cannot investigate themselves, not fairly. No entity can. I don't think the medical institution can. I don't think nursing can. I don't think food service can. So I think this is a awesome perspective, and I hope that you vote for it fully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Any other public comments, Paul?
None that I see.
Okay. Mr. Mangos, did you have your hand up?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a first and a second, and we've had discussion. Mr. Parker, could you please do the roll call?
Vice Chair Delaney.
Yes.
Ms. Domingos.
Yes.
Ms. Kina,
Yes.
Ms. Kenk. Ms. Kenk.
Okay.
Last call for Ms. Kenk. Ms. Pintar.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
One final time for Ms. Kenk. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, overview of improvement opportunities identified by the San Diegans for Justice. That's your attachment M that was sent out this afternoon. Mr. Parker?
Okay, this is very lengthy, and I don't know how much we want to get into detail. The whole point of this right now was to, a couple of months ago, as we know, San Diegans for Justice did a very extensive review of CLERB, very extensive, and provided a very detailed report with 70 areas of strengths and potential opportunities for improvement. A subcommittee was formed, and that subcommittee to look at these areas of potential improvement or suggestions. That subcommittee gave me the authority to do so myself at first, report back to the board, and then based on this initial review by myself, then reconvene the subcommittee to talk about next steps that need to happen. So I'm going to take, sorry, folks, I'm going to take about 10 minutes. I'm going to go through rather quickly. And if anybody raises their hands, quite frankly, I'm not going to see it because I'm going to be looking down. So just yell out and stop me. Okay. So consider, first off, honestly, I think our name is wrong. I mean, I don't even think we should be the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. It should be Community Law Enforcement Review Board or something like that. So hopefully that's something that could change at a later point for obvious reasons. Consider adding domestic violence to the list of complaint-based investigative authority. We already have the ability to do that. If it doesn't happen on duty, we don't. So I would support adding that as one of our areas. Consider authorizing CLERB to conduct pattern and practice investigations. I would absolutely support that. Consider expanding jurisdiction to cover all department employees. We all know that I support that. And, I also believe that if given the funding and staffing as we move forward, there's been the community has wanted oversight of peace officers in the county to include medical examiner peace officers, district attorney peace officers. We hear it all the time. If that's something that could be considered by code amendment or a vote or whatever, it could be something, if the community wants it, I would support that. Consider adding an ordinance provision that enhances the ability to enforce duty to cooperate. We're already there. We're already there. And we're working with the Deputy Sheriff's Association to make that even stronger. Consider adding an ordinance requiring the departments to provide CLERB with information to support specific disciplinary recommendations and public reporting of aggregated disciplinary information. I support that. At this point, I think we all know that we don't know what the disciplinary, what happens. We don't know the respective subject officer's discipline history so that CLERB can make a recommendation. CLERB's rules and regulations clearly state that they'll be provided that information and held very closely under confidentiality, but to use that to make the recommendation. So I would support that. Consider adding an ordinance provision formalizing the department's response to CLERB policy recommendations is required. Well, I support that. The department, Sheriff's Department and Probation Department have responded always, but they don't have to. It's a true statement. So I support that. Consider eliminating the ordinance provision that requires complaints to be signed under penalty of perjury. More research needs to be required. I think there's a reason for that, so that folks are willing to put their name on the dotted line, but I also understand that people aren't willing to do that for fear of retribution, retaliation, whatnot. So that's something that I would have to research some more. Accept electronic signatures. I support that. Develop policies and procedures governing steps to secure a signed complaint. I support that. That's already in process. We're already doing that before we dismiss a signed complaint for lack of signature. Consider eliminating the requirement that complainants agree to forego issuing subpoenas to CLERB. I'd have to talk to counsel in reference to that. I think I would support it. Continue pursuit of immediate notifications of critical incidents by the department. They're already notifying us of these incidents. Now, granted, they're not immediate in the critical incidents as far as great bodily injury, use of force resulting in great bodily injury, but they are about deaths and they are about anything else. As soon as they know about discharge of firearms, they do let us know. Respond to scenes, conduct preliminary investigative steps. It's already occurring. Pursue access to and participation in the department's critical incident review board. I'd support it. Conduct independent investigative steps as soon as practicable after incident occurs. It's already going on. It's already occurring. Pursue direct access department reporting information systems. That's supported. Develop investigative plans. It's already occurring. Consistently document investigative progress, including delays, already occurring. For the most part, let me back up. In process on that. In process. Our investigative reports that you see in the closed session, we could be doing a little bit better and we are working on it, and you'll see more coming up where there is a delay if we don't, and that's documented. Develop technology-based case management tools to enhance quality and timeliness, and that will be, I support that, and when we have the administrative analyst added in the new fiscal year, that would be a primary goal. Develop more robust policies and procedures to enhance timeliness and quality. That's in process. We're doing it all the time. Conduct and record witness interviews in person to the extent possible. It's occurring. Enforce subpoena power. That is occurring, and it's something we're working with the Deputy Sheriff's Association, as you know, to make so that nobody can not, at least when they get there and respond to a subpoena, that they testify. These are things that we're in conversation about. Enforce the duty to cooperate. Really already doing that. We're working with the department to, specifically the sheriff's department, to do that. So consider conducting non-public investigative hearings and public hearings at officers' request. We're doing so would improve fact finding. That option is available. It's been available for a very long time. We could do it tomorrow if a deputy or probation officer wanted it to happen. If not already doing so, require full file review by at least 2 staff members before closing a case. This already occurred. For serious cases, require legal input throughout the investigative process and legal review prior to closing. It occurs sometimes, and that's my call to make. It should occur more, I would assume, and so I support that. Pursue aggregated disciplinary data and other information from the departments to inform more specific disciplinary recommendations. We already talked about that. I support that. Pursue and publish data from the departments on the ultimate outcome of matters within CLERB's jurisdiction. Again, I would support that, but that's a personnel. Whatever the department does, departments do are considered personnel actions. So I'm certain that there's not going to be publication of, I don't see how that would happen, at least right now, but I would support that. Pursue visits in response to complaints and critical incidents that's occurring. Consider pursuing unannounced visits. I support that. Unannounced visits of the detention facilities. I do support that. Working with the department, we'll do the detention facility inspections as we have it laid out first, and then we'll move forward and then work with the department as we move forward with the ultimate, obviously it'd be great if we could do unannounced visits. However, we do understand the staffing and whatnot issues that come with that, but it's something that we would have a discussion with the department at a later time. Engage the community in development of recommendations regarding public facing policies. I'm all in with that. Develop recommendations to enhance the department's transparency. We've already done that. We've already done that, and some changes have been made because of that. Consider tailoring performance evaluation systems internally to address organizational needs, reinforcing key values of integrity, timeliness, and neutrality. I absolutely 100% support that. Reference it a little earlier during the op plan discussion about performance measures to impart those internally for investigative personnel. Increase use of data management technology to drive timeliness and quality. Of course, we talked about the admin. That's happening. Board. Share responses to board member questions about individual cases with all board members. That could happen. That could be better. That could be better. In closed session, there's no, everybody knows the questions that are being asked, but questions that come up beforehand should be shared with other board members as well. And I can implement something to make that happen. Provide a formal opportunity for board members to review key evidence that already exists. Consider requiring board members to attest to having reviewed the summary report and key evidence prior to decision-making. That will not occur. We are following our rules and regulations in which there is a pointed deliberation of each case in closed session in lieu of this attestation. Develop a protocol for appointing and acting executive director in the event of vacancies. I support that. Consider allowing for community input into the executive director performance objectives. I strongly support that. Consider appointing the executive director to a term of years with removal only for cause. I don't support that. I think I should serve as will, just as I am. And I mean, I can actually be removed without cause right now, right? So I would support the way it currently is, serve at will with no term of years, but it's up to the subcommittee what they want to do moving forward. Identify ways to streamline the process to minimize time of vacancies for board selection process. This is in process, and just so everyone knows, in reference to board member openings and vacancies and whatnot, this is at the level of the board offices, and this is at the level of the county management, that they are working to try to streamline these processes to get this done much more timely than it has been done in the past. And again, all of these next 5 topics are all at the level of the board and the county CAO to assess whether the geographic representation is inhibiting diversity of board composition. Consider expanding the board to add members with helpful subject matter expertise, personal experience. Enhance transparency around the selection process and criteria. Allow board input to the selection criteria for each vacancy to enhance diversity of representation and address needed subject matter expertise. Consider creating standing committees to take on regular tasks and ad hoc committees to take on larger non-recurrent projects. Obviously, I agree with all of that, and those are mostly in progress. at the county level. In reference to human resources, we're almost done, folks. In reference to human resources, mostly to increase investigative staffing to enhance ability to conduct investigations. I support it, but I'm not going to ask for more people unless I actually, until we really get a handle on what we're doing here as far as our investigations and timeliness. I do believe we need more, but I can't justify the ask just yet until we streamline our internal processes. Pursue in-house capabilities, data analysis, policy analysis. Obviously, I support that. Administrative analysts will help with that. Review quality and consistency of onboarding training. Support, provide consistent, regular training for board and specifically staff to stay abreast of policies and practices. Support, and for the most part, that occurs. Pursue external subject matter expertise as needed. I strongly support that. Pursue independent selection of outside counsel. That already has occurred, already in, done deal, right? Pursue database management technology. That's for the administrative assistant. Pursue external video evidence analysis capabilities. I support. For financial resources, the next 5 items I support. Funding, increased funding to support staffing, funding to afford in-house capabilities, funding for training, funding for investigative equipment, and consider reimbursing board members for reasonable expenses. That somewhat occurs, is my understanding. The data management component, these next 4 areas, all about administrative analysts when we get one, about case management, timelines, data to identify trends. These are things we've been talking about and have been putting out as best as possible, especially with our outside consultant that we use for the analytical report. Leverage data to identify patterns of practice and misconduct. The public has been clamoring for that. It's exactly what we need to do. And with the admin analyst that comes in after 1st of July, we look forward to doing that a heck of a lot more robustly than we have been. Explore feasibility of publishing investigative reports and information to the extent permissible by law. We already do it. Unless legally prohibited, disclose all MOUs. We already do it. Pursue aggregated data from department on case outcomes. And again, I support it, but it's a matter of what the departments are willing to share that's not confidential. Conduct periodic audits to assess whether the sheriff's department is following its own policy regarding the release of information on critical incidents. Well, I support that, but we don't have a way to do that, to conduct these audits, because that's, not really our jurisdiction, right? I mean, that's why the jurisdiction, if the community wants jurisdiction to be expanded to do more of a pattern and practice and to have an auditing function, that's not what this model is set up to do. Develop a data dashboard for the website on key metrics and case information. And that's something that we firmly support. And with the county's new department on data analytics, that's something we know we can do. Ensure public comments received at meetings that require a response from CLERB or the departments are directed to the appropriate resource. Well, the public comments received that no public comment requires a response, right? I mean, legally, that's how come public comments at any meeting you go to, normally people are not responding to public comments. So it would be great if we could, but that's not going to happen, I don't believe. And develop a strategic plan for community outreach, supporting two-way communication. Obviously, I support that. And with that, Vice Chair Delaney, that is my support or not support to these areas that are identified by San Diego for Justice. And then we will reconvene the subcommittee unless the board tells us to do something different or has additional concerns. But I think this is their opportunity to weigh in prior to the subcommittee reconvening. So with that, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Do we have any comments from the public?
We have comments. We have one comment from the public.
Okay.
Actually, I lied. We have two public comments from the public.
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I want to thank Angela St. Julian for the work on this report, and the University of Chicago is very thorough, very in-depth, and I want to thank CLERB and Mr. Parker for going along and accepting a lot of these recommendations for the things that you're not doing and things that you are doing, full steam ahead. Thank you, CLERB.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And next we will go to Ms. St. Julian. Are you there, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I want to second Yusef's comments to the extent that I want to thank each and every member of CLERB. I want to thank Mr. Parker for accepting the report that we prepared. We were really very diligent and we took this task on, we took it very, very seriously. We made sure we found, the best expert in the country who would really be able to look at CLERB and look at all of CLERB's strengths and look at all of its opportunities for improvement. And we did that because we really wanted to support CLERB in becoming everything that it and the community wanted it to be. So thank you for the attention that you paid to this report. And I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Delaney, I do not see any other requests to speak.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for that report. There's a lot of work for us to do, and we'll reconvene that subcommittee or the ad hoc committee, and we'll give an update in a couple of months. So appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, unfinished business. Update authority for executive officer to work with county staff. Mr. Parker, do you want to take A and B, please?
Sure, I can do both. There's really no change from the last month. Still working, still waiting to see how that bill proceeds through up in Sacramento for the legislation about increasing transparency. And then in reference to, there's been some good movement over the last week or so. I'll be working very, very closely with county council coming up real soon in reference to the medical care for county detention facilities for next steps. And I hope to have a pretty good update for you folks in July.
Thank you. Any public comments?
I don't see any.
Okay. Any comments from CLERB members? Ms. Pintar?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Sergeant Brayman and Dennis for organizing for me tours of the detention facilities that I visited all 6 of them last week on Thursday and Friday. It helped. It's very helpful to me to be able to see all of the modules and the setup, and as we review these cases, just to know what we're referring to at these facilities and see some of the operations. So I encourage the other members of the board to also visit these facilities if you haven't done so yet. I think it's helpful as we review these cases.
Thank you. And I agree. If you haven't seen the detention facilities, please make an appointment with Paul, or Paul, maybe you could set up another tour for those that haven't seen it. It's very important when we review the cases. Thank you. All right, board member comments. Do we have any board member comments? I'd like to thank Mr. Mingos for her service. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Okay. Now we'll go to the Sheriff Probation Liaison query. Does anyone have any questions for our liaisons? I'd like to thank all of you for attending our meetings. Much appreciated, and for your help. I think we're going to have some questions about the MOU down the road. Maybe you can give us a little bit more information about that. We have some questions. Mr. Wilson? You're muted.
Sorry. Can our liaison give us a report how many cases currently that the sheriff's department is investigating other departments, officer involved shootings?
Hi, I'm Sergeant Bain with Sheriff's Department. So Mr. Wilson, you're asking if how many cases we're currently investigating for other departments?
Yes.
I would have to look that up.
But they pertain to the MOU and officer involved shootings.
I know there has been some that we're currently investigating, but I would have to look up the number, and I don't believe that would be your jurisdiction, only because it's their case that we're investigating for their department.
Okay. If we could have that information in the future.
I can certainly look into what we can give
Sure.
to you.
Sure. No, I didn't expect an answer tonight. I was just curious if there are any ongoing cases.
Okay.
So Sergeant Bremen, I don't want to put you on the spot tonight, but maybe you could get with Mr. Parker and give us a little bit more information in the next month or so about how it works and all that, so we have a better idea.
Sure.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other comments or for Sergeant Bremen? Okay. That being the case, we're going to close session. Council, could you read us into closed session, please? And also just so that, let's take a 10-minute break as well.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, this board will adjourn to closed session to consider items 11A and 11B on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, everyone.